What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 predictions for the upcoming 2025 college football season. Up next is the Florida Gators. Florida coming off, of course, a very surprising season last year in 2024, finishing with an overall record at 8-5, 7-5 in the regular season, and of course with a very tough schedule, they were able to be a surprise team in 2024. And this is a Florida team getting a lot of hype in 2025. My thoughts on this team, I think they'll be pretty good and pretty solid on both sides of the football. First off, the quarterback, DJ Lagway is back. You know, he played part of the season last year, but for the most part, he was actually a really good quarterback, and he came in there and just played to the expectations that Florida was definitely expecting him to do. And this offense, I think, will be really good compared to last year. And then defensively, I think they'll be pretty solid. Not one of the best defenses in the SEC, but they definitely have a chance to be pretty solid on that side of the football. The problem, though, is the question mark that I have for Florida is definitely the schedule. Again, here is their schedule for 2025. Again, they were 8-5 last year in 2024. And like in 2025, they have a very brutal schedule. It's not one of the toughest in the country, but it's definitely top 5 at least, and definitely probably close to being the toughest schedule in the SEC out of all the teams in that conference. But let's go game by game, and I'll give you my official prediction for this Florida team for 2025. And they open up the season with a couple of easy games. They'll play LIU, an FCS team there on August the 30th. And then they play a group of 5 team in USF, also known as South Florida. They will play them there on September the 6th. I think Florida wins these 2 games. I think the difference, though, you look at LIU, that's probably a blowout, and then USF is probably, closer to like a 20-point win. I don't want to say that's a blowout. I mean, I know 3 touchdowns sounds like a lot, but, they should be LIU by at least 40 points, and then USF, they probably only win that one by at least 20 because USF is not a, bad group of 5 team. They've been really competitive against the SEC teams in the last couple of years, so I think Florida definitely has a tough time maybe in the first few minutes, but I got Florida starting off 2-0, so I got them beating LIU and USF here on August 30th and September 6th, and then they get ready for a road game. They open up SEC play on the road at LSU on September the 13th. This is a very tough game to start out SEC play for Florida. This LSU team, I think there'll be an upgrade on the defensive side of the football. That's definitely going to be the strength of this team. I know they have a pretty good offense already, but they made a little bit of an upgrade last year on defense, and I think it will be an even bigger upgrade in 2025. They do have a lot coming back, so I do like this LSU team a lot, but I think this will be a close game. I think it will be a competitive game. It could go really either way. It could be a pretty high-scoring game because you got 2 quarterbacks that can pretty much throw the football. DJ Lagway is the better running quarterback, but I think LSU's defense in the second half, it probably will be the difference here. Maybe they have a tough time stopping, DJ Lagway at running the football. And I also think LSU gets revenge on this Florida team from last year because they got beat by this, Florida team last season in the Swamp. This year it's in Death Valley. That's a very tough place to play. So I'm going to go with LSU here to get the win. So I got the Tigers getting revenge on the Gators. So that does drop Florida now to 2-1. And then they go back on the road to play Miami in a non-conference game on September 20th. Of course, you look back to last year's game, DJ Lagway did not play against Miami. It was Graham Mertz that was the quarterback, and last year's game was really just ugly for Florida. Even though they were playing at home, it was just a pretty ugly game, and if DJ Lagway probably would have got into the game for this Florida team, the game probably would have been a lot closer for this team. And I'm not saying that Graham Mertz was a bad quarterback last year, but I think DJ Lagway was just ready to go for this Florida team. I think this is a closer game this time, but it's on the road at Miami. That's not it's a very tough place to play, but you got back-to-back road games, and I think Florida probably comes in a little bit beat up, especially after playing a physical LSU defense, and that probably could cost them here. So I think in a competitive game, it's probably a low-scoring defensive game, or it could be a shootout. I think it's really a game that can go either way. But I do trust Carson Beck here for this Miami team to get it done. So yeah, Carson Beck going up against this Florida team that really he gave they had a pretty tough time with them last year. So I think Miami gets the win. I think Carson Beck, gets his redemption after playing a pretty bad game against Florida from last year. So I got Florida dropping back-to-back road game losses to LSU and Miami. So that's a 2-2 start for them. They get a bye week before playing at home against Texas on October the 4th. This is a pretty big game here for Florida. You know, Texas obviously a very talented team, possibly a top 10 team with all that hype with Arch Manning taking over at quarterback. I think this place is going to be really loud. You know, this is going to be a game where Florida can definitely pull off the upset. But I did my Texas video way back in the month of May, and I did pick the Longhorns to win this game. Not because they're the more talented team, but, you know, it's just a really tough, it's really kind of tough to go against a very talented Texas team. And Arch Manning, I think, is ready to go. I think this will be a close game, but I think Florida does come up short. And I think Florida is a team that's going to lose a lot of close games this year, but I think they can win some of these close games. But I think they lose a pretty tough one here to Texas. Again, I think Texas is also the more talented team, so I'm going to go with the Gators to lose that one. So that's 3 losses in a row, and then they play a road game against Texas A&M on October the 11th. This is also another tough game for Florida. It's on the road at Texas A&M, one of the toughest places to play in the SEC, and definitely in all of college football. I think Texas A&M is going to be a pretty good team. They have a lot coming back on both sides of the football. Marcel Reed is back at quarterback, and you look at these two quarterbacks, they're both really good running at the football, so this is kind of a battle here to see who the better quarterback is at running the football. I do trust Marcel Reed a little bit, you know, to get it done more often, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Gators did pull off a huge win here against Texas A&M, but still, I think Texas A&M playing at home, that's probably the difference here, so I'm going to go with the Aggies to get the win, and I also think their defense kind of takes a big step, and I think they probably get a big stop at the end of the night, so I'm going to go with Florida to lose this game. So that's 4 losses in a row now from that stretch from September 13th to October the 11th. That's a really brutal stretch there. September 13th, October 11th, you got back-to-back road games, LSU and Miami in the non-conference in the SEC. And then you got Texas and Texas A&M back-to-back games as well. So that's a 2-4 start. And then they play Mississippi State at home on October 18th. I think Florida finally gets a win here against Mississippi State. I don't really expect the Bulldogs to be really good this year. I think they'll be a little bit better on offense, but defensively they have so many question marks there. So I think Florida gets the win here over Mississippi State, and that's their first win since September 6th, and also their first win in the SEC after an 0-3 start. So that puts them at 3-4, and then they play Georgia coming out of the bye week on November 1st. They always get a bye week before playing the Bulldogs of Georgia. You know, you look back at last year's game, if DJ Lagway did not get hurt in this game, I think Florida probably would have won this game because, you know, obviously Georgia was so inconsistent at times last year, and then sometimes they looked like the better team and also the more talented team in the country, but their defense really gave the difference. I think Georgia's defense won them the game last year, but, you know, this is a very tough game, you know, to predict and everything. When I did Georgia's video, I just still think Georgia is the better team, and I also think their defense is definitely a lot better than Florida's. I mean, offensively, I mean, they can give Georgia's defense trouble with DJ Lagway running the football, but I still don't think it will be enough. I think Florida does come up short of pulling off just another upset here, and like I said, this is a Florida team that probably can lose a lot of close games this year just because of how tough this schedule is, but they will be competitive in almost all these games. So I got Florida dropping that game, and that does put the Gators now at 3-5. And then they have a road game against Kentucky on November 8th. This is kind of a trap game here for Florida. You know, basically after playing a physical game against Georgia from last week. Kentucky is a team, though, that definitely has a lot of question marks. I don't know how good this Kentucky team is going to be, and that's coming from myself as a Kentucky fan. I just don't know how good this Wildcat team is going to be. And, you know, last year's game between these two teams was not really close, but, you know, I think it will be a closer game this time. But I think Florida definitely is the better team. I do trust DJ Lagway to get this done, and I think Florida gets a much-needed win here, and they also get their first road win in the SEC against Kentucky. So I think they get the win here in Lexington, and I got them improving to 4-5. And then they play another road game at Ole Miss on November 15th. You know, I already did my Ole Miss video, and I did pick the Rebels to win this game as well. I I wouldn't be surprised if the Florida Gators did win this game, though. I mean, Ole Miss has got a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the football. I mean, we know how good they're going to be on the offensive side of the football, but still, this is on the road. It's a really tough place to play, and also you're coming off maybe a physical game against a Kentucky team that, gave you a close game from last week. So I think Ole Miss actually beats Florida here, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Gators did win this game as well. I know last year's game, Florida beat them at home, but this time it's on the road, and I think Ole Miss gets the win here, and I think they get revenge on the Gators from last season. So that puts Florida now at 4-6. They got to win their last two games to get to a bowl game. They play Tennessee after that at home on November 22nd. Of course, this will be a revenge game here for Florida from last year. Last year they lost to Tennessee in overtime by 6. If there was a big win on the schedule that Florida can definitely win, I think it's this game. I think Tennessee will be a pretty good team, but with the addition of Nico Amaliava gone in the transfer portal, that's definitely a concern there for Tennessee, and they definitely have a lot of question marks, a lot of new faces on the offensive side of the football, and I just don't know how good Tennessee will be on the offensive side of the football. I think their secondary will be really good, but I think DJ Lagway and this Florida team will run the football here and waste the clock down and keep that Tennessee offense off the field for as long as possible, and I think they get a big win here over Tennessee. So I think Florida gets the win, and they put them at 5-6, and then the final game of the season at home against Florida State on November 29th. I think Florida State's going to turn things around this year in 2025. I mean, they're not going to be like an ACC contender or anything like that, but this will be a pretty decent team. I think this will be a competitive game, better than last year's game, but still, Florida's playing at home. They definitely should be able to get it done, and also, they're kind of, in a situation where they needed to make it to a bowl game, so I think the Gators get the much-needed win, and I think that's enough to make it to a bowl game. So I got the Gators finishing 6-6, and I understand if you do not agree with that prediction, but I look at this schedule, and it's a very tough schedule, and that just gives me so many question marks about this Florida team's schedule, but I can definitely see them doing better than that 6-6 record. I wouldn't be surprised if this team did go 7-5 or 8-4, but I think 9-3 and 10-2 for a lot of people that are expecting them to do that, to go like 9-3 and 10-2 and be like an absolute playoff contender. I just do not see that happening. I think 7-5, 8-4, 6-6, the most likely records because of how tough this schedule is. Again, you got LSU and Miami back-to-back road games, and then you got some tough games here in the SEC. So yeah, this is a very tough schedule, and that's why I got Florida going 6-6. But like I said, I can see them doing much better than that at 7-5 or 8-4. And you can call me a Florida hater because I'm a Kentucky fan, but look, I don't have nothing against Florida. I can definitely see this team doing better than that 6-6 record, but that's what I'm going to go with. So that's my prediction for Florida for 2025. I know people would not agree with this, so give me your prediction for Florida down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.